Well, hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Links Through the Lens of DEI. Our presenters today are Carmine Stewart, President and CEO of Aspire Consulting and Educational Services, and Sudie Whalen, Senior Technical Assistance Consultant with the American Institutes for Research. You can feel free to let us know where you're calling in from today by dropping a line and a hello in the chat box. If you have any questions during their presentation, feel free to submit those in the Q&A box. And with that, I'll turn it over to our presenters. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Hello and happy Friday, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with you today. In this session today, you're going to learn about a new online course through links and the resources that we have developed in order to kind of help support diversity, equity, and inclusion within your classrooms and your programs. Before I get started, here's some quick information about Links. Links is operated by the American Institutes for Research, AIR, under a contract with the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education. This disclaimer just lets you know that although working under this contract, the content doesn't necessarily reflect the views or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. So let's jump in. So first want us to introduce ourselves. My name is Sudie Whalen. I am a credentialed CTE teacher who moved over to American Institutes for Research a couple of years ago. Well, not a couple, it's been 6 years now. I'm the director of online learning for Links, and I help to develop new courses, update new courses, lead updating of new courses, working with SMEs and things of that nature. And what I'm going to be sharing with you today is a DEI course that I authored with some awesome advisors who helped to make sure I stayed on the right track as we went through the development of this course. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, and I'm very passionate about moving equity forward in adult education. Before we jump more into our content, I would like Dr. Stewart to introduce herself.
Good afternoon or morning, everyone, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining us. So my name is Carmine. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I've been working in adult literacy for 17 years now as an instructor, as a program coordinator. I now serve as the Vice President of Programming for a program called Seeds of Literacy in Cleveland. And I also have my own company, Aspire Consulting and Educational Services, where I do professional developments and teacher education for adult literacy practitioners. And now I'm very excited to also be the moderator for the Links DEI discussion group. And I hope to see you all online very soon.
There we go. Thanks so much, Carmen. So just really quickly, as you know, I already mentioned that I'm the director of online learning, so I'm going to move us forward into our agenda. So the topics we're going to cover today are a quick overview of Links and what it is, just in case anyone's not familiar. We're going to talk about the Links DEI community, and Dr. Stewart's going to share some of the upcoming type of things and how her focus works throughout the community or for the community. We're also going to spend some time talking about why it's important to intentionally focus on DEI. We'll talk about some of the new DEI products that are there to help you move that focus forward into action. And then we're also going to talk about the ways you can use the various Links courses, including the new DEI one we're going to be talking about today. So when we think about ways that you might use Links, you could be using Links by belonging to a community. You may want to refer learners to the Links Learner Center. Yes, there's a Links Learner Center that has publicly facing, freely available access and learning materials specifically for students. It's like one of the best kept secrets, so check that out when you get a chance. You might want to utilize the Links research as a topic for resources as a topic for research. I don't know why I just got those words mixed up, but you might be looking into different things available. The Links Resource Connection has a lot of really great, well-vetted resources that are there for you, and nothing is behind a paywall. You might be sharing resources with a colleague. You may be taking an online course, and I have a bit of an affinity bias towards our Links Learner portal because that's my baby, but you might be taking an online course. You may be have facilitated a training for Links or attended a facilitated training. You might have even presented with us at COABE or some other time. So for those of you who are in the room, put into the chat if any of those statements resonate with you. Are you familiar with Links? Have you been a facilitator? Have you taken a course? How have you engaged with Links in the past? Webinars, awesome. Taking courses, thanks, Sarah. Online resources, online courses and webinars, professional learning communities. Jeff's brand new to Links. I'm so glad you're here. Conferences, thank you. Several webinars. Trainer from Links, thank you. Online courses. Jen's new to links. Glad you're here, Jen. Online professional learning communities, training topics. Oh, Lacey, hi. You have been a moderator and also a trainer, and she's taken the DEI course. That's awesome. Taken courses, promoted courses for ESOL, online courses, attended webinars. Candace, welcome. Welcome also, Jen, our newbies. Love to have you here. Angela is part of the community. Great. Thank you so much for weighing in and kind of sharing with us your current experiences with links. So at this point, I'm going to pass this over to Dr. Stewart, and she's going to talk to us a little bit more about the community.
Okay, so the Links DEI community is a newer community. It really went live in November. And the purpose of it is really to give opportunities for adult educators to continue the conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to make sure that we're thinking about ways that we can implement DEI concepts into our programs. And my hope is for it to become a safe space for us to discuss topics that you may not necessarily feel comfortable talking about with your colleagues and with students in your site. Next slide, please. So if you are currently a part of one of the Links communities, can you add which community you're a part of in the chat? Is anyone active in the Links community so far? And if you're a part of the DEI community, we definitely want to know about that as well. Okay, so correctional education career pathways. And I'll tell you, just being a part of, oh, great, Angela, as of today, beautiful. I'll tell you, just working with the other moderators, they're all just really talented, really committed people who are very passionate about adult literacy. So it's very exciting. Yes, and yes, beautiful, great.
To answer your question, I just lost it. Elizabeth, it's a literacy information network and communication system.
Okay. Next slide, Sudie. Okay, so the purpose of the DEI community, as I see it, is to help expand practitioner understanding of different DEI concepts. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, there are lots of different pieces to it. And so we want to make sure that everybody is aware, and we're really kind of approaching it from, if you know absolutely nothing, to just build our knowledge over the course of the years that we're in a part of this community. Also to provide strategies and resources for incorporating DEI into program practices, and whether that's reviewing your orientation or looking at curriculum and instruction, how do we take these DEI concepts and then act on them? The action part is important to us. And then also to support critical conversations about DEI in the adult literacy space. And again, that's just really creating a safe space for us to have conversations around different things that we see and experience, or things that we want to try, and to have a safe community to give feedback and support for those conversations. So the way that I'm currently trying to do the community is by starting off with 3 discussion groups over the course of the month. And the first discussion group is just to focus on one component of DEI. In the first month, we talked about identity. And if you've not participated in that conversation, it's not too late. They're ongoing, and I do check them every single day. So the first discussion group will learn what is that concept. The second discussion will ask you to do a personal reflection on your own personal experience with that concept. And then the third discussion group will ask you to have a cross-cultural conversation with someone around that concept. So for example, for identity, we talked about, when did you know that, that identity is something that's formed by the communities that are around us and the cultures that we're a part of. For part 2, we each talked about a time when we realized that some facet of our identity mattered. So when I realized that being female was a thing, and that it meant that there were things that I couldn't do that males could do. So there's that personal reflection. And the third part is a cross-cultural conversation where you swap stories with someone, maybe in your program or maybe someone in your life who's different from you in at least one of those identity areas, social identity areas, and then have a conversation about when they might have discovered that some facet of their identity matter, or whether they never had to have that conversation. So for example, in our conversations, we talk about what the privilege that we have if you are heterosexual of never having to come out as straight, right? So just having conversations around those kinds of topics. And then for each month, there'll be a monthly event that is a synchronous conversation and an opportunity to learn a little bit more and to dig a little bit deeper. And we're very excited about some of the things that we have coming up. For most of those conversations, we'll have someone outside who can bring in additional resources that you might want to tap into as you're looking to bring more DEI into your program and to increase DEI in your learning and instruction.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stewart, for sharing your approach and helping to add so much purpose to our DEI community. It's one of our newest communities, so we're really excited to have that off the ground. So now I'm going to give you a quick overview of Links, since not everyone is familiar with what Links offers, and then we'll dive deeper into why do we do this work. So we have this quick at a glance here that kind of gives you an overview. Links has 5 components. Our 5 components are, of course, the community, our learning portal, the resource collection, state resources, and then we also have our learner center. By having all these things available, the goal is to make sure that we can meet the needs of students in a modern context and help them get to where they need, whether that's transitioning from their adult education program into college, into job sustaining and life sustaining careers and those kinds of things. So we really want to help support teachers, administrators, and state staff with moving their visions for their students forward. So when we think about the things that we offer, there are different audiences that you may have in mind, that we may have in mind for different types of topics. So for the community, that's great for instructors, program administrators, and staff. The learning program is the same, the learning portal, I should say, as with the resource collection. There's a state resources section that's specifically designed for state staff so that they can reach out and get technical assistance, utilize different things, and I'll get more into that in a moment. And then we also have our learner center, which is specifically for instructors and adult learners. As I said previously, that learner center is all freely and publicly available resources that learners can just go on to the learner center and access, or instructors can access and utilize within their classrooms. So how do you access links? To get to the resources that I've been sharing with you, you start at the links website, which is links.ed.gov. Then you'll have to create an account in order to register for any of the courses that are available. Once you're registered, you can enroll in any one of the self-paced courses. The beauty of it is you can pick whatever courses you want. The courses are designed so that you can earn a certificate, and we'll get more into that in a moment, but you can jump around it throughout any part of the course that you need. So if you're pretty familiar with one area of a course, but you see something else that might be more interesting to you or that you have a need for, and you want to just grab those resources, you can do that. But if getting the certificate is important to you and showing those hours, you can complete the whole thing and also get a certificate. There's a QR code on the screen in case you need to, if you want to scan that so that you can get to the account creation location so you can join the Links community. If you want to, once you've created an account, just the tabs across the top, just click that courses link. It does take a few, sometimes a couple of days to verify and authenticate your account and allow you access. So please be patient with that, because that is actually done by humans and it's not auto-generated, because we want to make sure that we're giving access to adult education audiences and not to bots and things of that nature. Once you have your account and you're logged in, just click that courses tab and you can literally click on any one of those courses that you would like and you can have access to it. Currently, we have 30 available self-paced courses. We've got 3 that are going to be launching in the next couple of months, and then we have another 4 that are being developed in this next year, actually in the next 9 months. And then we also have another 4 that are being brand new, updated. Some courses coming out of retirement. If you've been a Links member for a long time, you know in December 2020, we had to retire a bunch of courses that contained Flash because it's no longer supported by Adobe. So we've been slowly bringing some of those back while also creating all new content, and everything that we update is brand new and sparkly and pretty and easy to navigate. So we're going to be bringing those out. We have 7 courses specific to career pathways. We have 1 DEI course that's now just came out and launched in October. We have 4 English language acquisition courses, including courses that are for brand new ESL teachers or English language acquisition teachers, and courses for more experienced teachers. We have 2 courses on integrating technology. We also have courses for learners with disabilities, a science course, and actually after we finish doing the updates and the new courses this year, there'll be more courses in some of these categories. And then we have 9 courses under the teaching and learning category. So when we're thinking about, you're very welcome. Thank you, Elizabeth. So when we're thinking about why should we focus on DEI, let's think about a little bit what the research tells us, right? I work for American Institutes for Research, and I'm not going to lie, anybody who knows me knows I'm an absolute nerd. I love research. I love books. I love understanding the why behind things and the purpose, right? So research tells us that an intentional focus on topics related to DEI within our classrooms improves students' sense of identity, belongingness, and positively impacts cognitive development. That's the way their brains function. Education agencies, which allow students to engage with racially diverse learning through cross-racial interactions, these things have measurable positive effects on all students, regardless of if the individual student's frequency of engagement with diversity outside the classroom is less. What that tells us is that we give students opportunities to learn from each other and their cultures and to experience diversity, even if they don't get that in their regular neighborhood and when they're at home, it has a positive effect and outcome for our students, increasing cognitive ability. That's a pretty huge finding from my perspective. Research also tells us that working on structural issues around DEI as individual bias, I don't know why I'm stumbling here. Working on structural issues as well as individual biases, both need to be done in order to create a conclusive school environment. That means I can't just focus on my own bias and think that's going to change our whole system, and changing the whole system without individuals focusing on bias doesn't have a massive impact. So not focusing on DEI can lead to statistics like those from the 2016 study, which found that non-Black teachers of Black students held lower expectations for their students than Black teachers of Black students. Research findings have also shown that Black and Latinx students, regardless of gender, experience higher levels of stereotype threat. And stereotype threat is when students don't perform as well because they assume they won't perform as well, or they assume that those who are reviewing their assessments aren't expecting them to do well. There's a lot of, I'm not going to go down the research rabbit hole here with you, but there's a lot of research that tells us that teacher expectations have a huge impact on how students do, including when we talk about students that we expect to do well. If we think about the model minority myth, right, that has negatively impacted Asian students for decades because they don't always get the support that they need because their teachers assume they don't need it. Meanwhile, Black and Brown students often don't get the support that they need because their teachers may not feel that they have any positive outcome or that they even have potential for college or that career, right? And so they don't get that support. Agencies that are equipped with a range of voices and perspectives throughout the ranks of their staff are better able to innovate, take risks, solve problems creatively, bounce back from failure, because let's be real, failure happens, and turn challenges into opportunities. So what that means is having a diverse staff helps to support a diverse student population. And those of us, which I assume is all of us in adult education, know we have a naturally and organically diverse student population from not just ethnicities and cultures, but also ages and from all the places that they originate from, right? And so we have to make sure that we can support those students. And by hearing diverse staff voices really helps us do that well. So why DEI? In short, an intentional focus on DEI provides benefits to students, staff, and your agency. Is there any questions? I just want to take a quick pause and review the chat before we move forward. Yeah, I know. Thank you for sharing that, Joanne. It was, yes, it is Joanne. I just wanted to missay her name. It's really an interesting perspective when you think about that the research supports that what we think about our students really matters, and what our students think that we think about them really matters and impacts those outcomes. So thank you for reflecting on that in the chat. So let's talk a little bit about these new resources, because as you can probably tell, I am very excited. So let's look at what they are. So first we have our new course. This is already out, no longer under development. It's available now. You can sign up and take it. It's called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion from Awareness to Action. And the reason we chose that title very intentionally, because we noticed that a lot of people have amazing commitments and ideas and visions for how they want to move DEI forward. But once we move from the vision and the commitment and awareness, there has to be action behind it. And so what we did with this course is intentionally provide tools, resources, examples even of how to move those conversations forward. So the structure of the course is 7 sections. There's an introduction. Unit 1 focuses on understanding and defining what we mean by DEI and the various concepts connected to that, including a glossary of terms. So if you're wondering what a microaggression is, there's a definition for that in there, right? There's so many interesting definitions in there. Unit 2, awareness building, is focusing on understanding our adult learners. Understanding who our adult learners are within our community, knowing where to look in the data to find out who our learners are, understanding their needs, those kinds of things. Unit 3 is also an awareness building unit that focuses on cultural competence and inclusion. It helps you identify what does it mean to be culturally competent, self-assessments to identify if you are yet, and then inclusion and inclusive classroom self-assessments, those kinds of things, and then action steps to help move these things forward. Unit 4 is also awareness building and about the many forms of bias. We also often hear about implicit and explicit bias, but there's a lot of different forms of bias, and there's different ways that bias can be demonstrated. So that unit really focuses on giving you concrete examples of what the bias looks like and how to avoid that bias. And then unit 5 is the taking action unit, and that's all about conducting an equity audit. Now, this course is designed so that you can do this course with an individual, you can do it with a team. You can do it from the agency perspective if you would like, or from the classroom perspective. So when we say equity equity audit, there's a classroom equity audit, and then there's also a program equity audit. And I see your question, Elizabeth. No, there is no cost to this course. It is freely available. All resources are free. Thank you, Carmen, for jumping in there with that. And then the last section is the conclusion. The objectives of the course are that we're hoping that by the time you finish it, you'll be able to understand and define what is meant by diversity, equity, and inclusion in the classroom and the program level. You'll be able to identify steps that individuals can take to progressively move forward their commitment to DEI into action at the individual and the programmatic perspective. And then we'll also hope that you'll identify steps for conducting an equity audit and work towards sustainable DEI efforts. One of the cool things about this course is that we intentionally created little videos throughout each of these sections of the course to give you an example of how you can frame a conversation around DEI. So if someone comes to you and says, I don't even know where to start, or I'm a little embarrassed to even try to host these conversations with my team, there's some suggestions in there about how administrators and how teachers can really dialogue around this. So it's really important to think about how you communicate your focus on equity as you move that forward, so that you make sure you're bringing everybody along with you and not leaving anybody behind. And then if you take the course, the activities that are included with the course will help you to understand and define the concepts, collect, organize, and analyze the demographics of the population you serve, be intentional regarding cultural competence, understanding and removing bias in the classroom programming, and then really thinking about and acting on conducting an equity audit. And I want to be very clear that when we think about who are our students, we're talking about not just race, not just ethnicity, we're also talking about gender, we're talking about how they identify, we're talking about orientation if they want to share that with you. We're also talking about how many returning citizens do you have in your community, and are you meeting their needs? And there's a lot of great information about how to access that data on Vera Institute and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of things in there. And what's really interesting is that each one of the sections of the course includes some type of reflection or action step activity to really get you to not only think about how do I do this at my program, but also how can I individually move myself forward so that I can help move this forward. We are all ongoing learning and developing and growing on an ongoing basis. And so it's really important to acknowledge that and know that when we come into these types of courses, we don't come into it thinking we already know everything, but we come into it thinking I'm here to learn. And that's why I love to go to DEI specific sessions and learn from people like Carmine and listen in on the things that they're doing, because I'm always learning and growing. So come into it with an attitude of I want to learn and grow, right? Another thing you'll notice when you go into the course is up top, we included some information in there just about being patient with yourself. Some of these topics can be difficult. Some of the topics, there's a video on microaggression that gives the student perspective on all the microaggressions that they could think of, the stories that they tell, how they've experienced it, all of that. And some of those things can be hard to watch. I know every time I watched it, I saw myself represented in that video on both the receiving and the giving end of microaggressions, right? And so just be patient. If you need to take a minute, do a unit, step back, reflect, sit with it. Or if you see something and you're like, this is something I need to sit with and think about, or that makes me a little uncomfortable, that's okay. Give yourself grace to take a beat, really think about how you're learning and how you're moving forward and what you can do within your sphere of influence, and then jump back in. But don't quit, don't give up. So just keep moving forward. This is a self-paced course, Sarah. So, but to Sarah's point, though, I do want to point out, spoiler alert, I don't know if I was supposed to say this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Carmen is advising me this year, and we're working on a facilitated version of this course. So Sarah, it is currently only a self-paced course, but states will be able to request it as a facilitated course next year. So, or later this year, I should say. So keep an eye out for that, because that's also becoming available. So I do want to pause and take a minute and see if anybody else has any other questions or thoughts. And if not, I can give you a little bit more information on some of the things that are included in the course. Within the course right now, like I said, it's designed so you can do it individually or with a team. I strongly suggest, if you can get a team together, to do it with a team. If you're really trying to move equity forward at your program, it is really hard, if not impossible, to do that all by yourself. Like they say, a rising tide raises all boats. You really need that rising tide to raise all of the boats, right? So if you were interested in doing the course, or if you want to do the course on your own and take it back to others and then go back through it together as a team, that's strongly recommended, especially as you're reflecting on equity audits for the program level and things like that, because you may be able to identify gaps by yourself, but you can't necessarily fix every gap by yourself. I know some really awesome administrators who always recognize that they need their team to move things forward. They can't just do it on their own. And teachers oftentimes can be left feeling a little helpless when they do these types of things and feeling like, I know these are problems, but I don't know what to do about it. So it helps to have kind of a multi-level group of people and staff going through this together, whether it's a teacher, an administrator at the local program, and maybe even district staff doing it with you together and thinking through how do we move that forward. Is DEI under attack in some states or Congress? I am not going to speak to that today, because that's not the purpose here, but I think that's something that that's evident if you look into it yourself, but I'm not going to dive into that, because I am trying to be nonpartisan today and just focus on holistically, what do we need for our students specifically, and what can I do and share with you within my sphere of influence to move things forward. But yes, and we all have blind spots. Thank you, Carmen, for pointing that out. It's really important to understand that none of us are ever completely unbiased, but the important thing is for us to identify those biases and then move forward beyond those biases. And we have to identify what that bias is in order for us to keep from letting that bias infiltrate into our work, whether that's assessment bias, scoring bias. And when I say assessment bias, that means asking questions that we assume our students will be able to answer, but not understanding their lived experiences enough to know that they may not be able to answer a question. And when we think about scoring bias, that's when we assume that the student who's going to do well is going to do well, and we assume the student who isn't going to do well doesn't do well. And there's examples of these various types of biases and things like that included within the course. One of my favorite examples, and by favorite I don't mean because it's good, but it's like just a really strong example, is the memo study, in which they had a lot of law partners review 2 memos that were authored by the exact same person. Technically, they had the same number of errors in both memos, and they even had the same first name, Thomas Meyer. They're both attributed to Thomas Meyer. The only difference in the information that they had was that one Thomas Meyer was attributed to being an African-American author, and the other Thomas Meyer was attributed to being a Caucasian author. Everything else was exactly the same. And unsurprisingly to me, but might be surprising to others, they found a lot more errors in the Thomas Meyer that was African-American versus the Thomas Meyer who was not. And so what that tells us is when we expect to see errors, we see errors. And when we don't see those errors. And that can be a little bit more granular when we're thinking about the students we like and connect with really well, and we have an affinity bias towards, versus the students that, not that we dislike them, we just don't know them as well, right? And so we don't want to score students lightly and loosely just because we like them, because that doesn't help them either, right? So there's a lot of different forms of bias in there. Okay, so now I want to jump into just sort of the type of resources and things that we have available and how to use the links courses. So when you think about, there we go. So there's a number of different ways that you can utilize links courses that are developed and once they're ready. So we have the self-paced course, of course. And then you also have statewide professional development that's available. So if you want to say, I would like a whole team from my state to do this self-paced course, and I would like follow up on how that's going, and can you enroll them all? Links can support you in doing that, right? You can also download the DEI course, upload it into your own state PD system, adapt it, and make it your own. I do ask, though, as you're adapting, to try to stay true to the concepts that are included in the course and do the adaptation in which to focus on your state. So, for example, if you're doing the section on who are our students, that's an opportunity, if you're adapting this for your state, to plug in your student information and the data specific to the students within your state and what you know about your students. And then you can also, like I said, you can download, you can customize, plug it into your system, that kind of thing. You can also request a facilitated course. As we said, that's currently under development. But if you have something in mind that you want to do right now, reach out to us. We'll work with you and figure out what can we provide to you based on this course and to meet your need. And Carmen recently sent us an email. We've been working with the state on exactly that. So if you have whatever your PD need is around DEI, please just reach out. As my grandmother used to say, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So just ask the question and we'll support you as much as we can. So we have new resources that are being loaded into our resource collection, and you don't have to be in the course to get access to these once they're hosted. There's the cultural competence self-assessment, and by the way, part of the reason I'm really excited about these is because they're specifically for adult education. I don't know if any of you have ever gone to Google an equity audit tool for adult education, but it did not previously exist that was openly available, right? So we decided to make sure that we had resources that are available to you. So we have the cultural competence self-assessment, the classroom inclusion self-assessment to identify how inclusive are you being with all of the students in your classroom. There's a classroom equity audit tool, a program equity audit tool, and then a couple of other just really cool tools and self-assessments that you'll be able to utilize. So that is available there for you. And said, how do you address biases in your students? So that's actually kind of addressed in the course too, thinking about how do we have these conversations, not just with colleagues, but also with students, because we do understand that a lot of times the microaggressions that happen on campuses and in the classroom aren't necessarily coming from staff not understanding and not being culturally competent and aware, but sometimes it's student interactions with each other. And we talk about the importance of kind of addressing that when it happens so that those on the receiving end of microaggressions aren't left feeling like they're invalidated and their teacher supports that. You're asking if you can see an example of a completed equity audit? No, and we wouldn't suggest sharing one either. And the reason for that is those equity audits are very specific to individual programs, so we would never share an example of some program's actual equity audit, but there is an equity audit tool in there that you can access and utilize. And it's really simple to follow and has really direct questions and things like that. Any other questions? This is going way faster than I thought. Carmen, do you want to weigh in?
I would just say with one example, when you were talking about encouraging people to do the work together, I've done some work with some educators in Massachusetts, and there was one particular program where she was really on her own. And it really does make sense to have support from the administrative side, even if support from the board, support from instructors participating in the course together, because creating that change, I mean, all of these issues are systemic issues. So creating that change, it's going to take change on different levels. And so if you are able and have the ability to do that, it does make a lot of sense to do this as a program or with folks who are different at multiple levels of the program.
Thank you for sharing that. So Lisa had a really great request, and I like to say yes whenever I can say yes. It might be a problem I have. If you ask my husband when I'm engaging with my kids, I say yes too much. But I like being able to say yes to this one. So she asked if we could see an example of the program equity audit and see what the tool looks like. And I would be happy to share that with you. So give me 1 second, then you get to see what the course looks like. So let me get back to my links page. Let me go home so you can actually see what it looks like. All right, Carmen, can you see that on the screen? Okay, great. So if you go into courses and you scroll down here to the DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion section, and you click here. So they're not posted yet, Laura, but if you want to access them now, they're within the course. So if I go down to, and you're kind of seeing let me switch my view so you can actually see what this looks like from the student perspective. I forgot I have the managerial perspective. You're like, there's a lot of extra buttons. So this is what it looks like from the student view. So if I go down to Unit 5, which is the equity audit section, If I go in here, if you want to just jump to the tools and resources and don't go through and not jump through the whole, which I do suggest you take the whole course, but if you're just trying to find a resource, click the resources handout, because within that is the hyperlinks to all of the resources that are included in the whole unit. So in here, you'll see the program equity audit tool is linked here, and this is what it looks like. And it's really easy to follow and use. It's a fillable 508 compliant PDF, works with a screen reader if anybody needs that. And it has all these different sections in which you think about what does it mean to be a leader in this program, in this context, when we think about moving things forward from a curriculum perspective, that kind of thing. So that's the program equity audit that you can access. And then if you want to see the other items like the classroom equity audit, that's here as well. And that's the tool is here. And almost all of these tools were created or adapted for something that was previously created, and we requested permission to adapt them specifically for adult education. And it took a lot of time and effort, but we were able to get that done because we felt strongly enough and that it was important enough for us to do that for adult education specifically. But we get into the different categories in terms of, we had classroom environment here, instructional strategies and being inclusive there, those kinds of things. And then we also have, self-reflection handouts and things like that. The other thing I want to show you really quick is if we go into our cultural competence and inclusion section, that's where you can find that cultural competence self-assessment, which looks like this. And it has a complete self-assessment and tells you how to kind of, reflect on that and what to do with it and thinking about that. And then we also have our classroom inclusion, inclusive classroom self-assessment that's there as well. And again, the resources will eventually be within the collection, but in the meantime, you can pop into the course, go into those unit resources and grab whatever you need. Yes, you will need to reach out to us. So yes, you can reach out to us to request the course, and I'll give you that contact information in just a second. But yeah, you will need to reach out in order to request the course be added to your LMS. Basically what we'll do is give you access to the GitHub repository that has all those courses in there. And so was this created with an adult ESL classes and programs in mind as well? This was created with adult education in general in mind. None of the content within the course is specific to learners or should be utilized at the learner level. So there's no, in terms of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not the context and the verbiage is not leveled for students. However, we did include, let me go and show you where that was. Go back to where I just was. I think I put it in the conclusion. That's not the one, because I'm could have sworn I grabbed a link in here to include for continuing this conversation with students or the curriculum. Where did I put that? I might have put it in the adult learner. I might have put it in here. Anyway, there's a link in here somewhere that actually includes, I'll have to find it, but it's in the course. And if you email me, I'll send it to you later. That has a bunch of curriculum that's specifically for meeting diverse needs of students. And like if you're trying to showcase different cultures, ethnicities, different genders, like that kind of thing, that has a lot of really great diverse types of things that are specifically for different types of students, whether we're talking about English language acquisition or ABE and those kinds of things. So if you shoot me an email, I can share that with you. I'm pretty sure it's linked somewhere in the course, but I can't remember exactly where I put it. All right, so in terms of staying connected with us at Links, you can join the community at community.links.ed.gov. You can also join the Links DEI community specifically at community.links.gov/group/151. There's also the learning portal, which is where you can access those courses. That's links.ed.gov/courses. And then you also have our, my menu's in my way. The Learner Center, I keep plugging that because it's just so underutilized and there's so many cool resources on there for students and for teachers. And then you can also follow us on social media at links_ed on Twitter. And then we also have our professional group at links_ed within LinkedIn. That is a closed group. So if you have questions and things like that, feel free to join it. And then our webinars are all archived on the Links Ed YouTube channel. Not all, but a lot of them are. I'm going to turn us back over to Dr. Stewart for a moment so she can talk about her upcoming DEI event.
So just for, each moderator creates a monthly event for their community. And then those events are a way for us to come together to focus on the topics that we're focusing on for that month. And so what upcoming, we have some events that I'm very excited about. And the first one in March is going to be the Critical Media Project, is going to talk about how the media impacts our understanding of identity. And we're very excited to have Dr. Lisa Strope. It'll be a live event. It's about 45 minutes. It'll also be posted in the DEI community. So you want to make sure that you join that and start participating so that you know when things are coming up. It'll also be on our social media. So you'll follow us on those channels and you'll see that as well. And we're talking about bias in the month of April. In the month of April, I'll actually be facilitating that discussion. And I'm very, very excited about our discussion in the month of May. So Amy Johnson is from Project Implicit. And Project Implicit is the group behind the Harvard Implicit Bias Assessments that you've probably heard of and possibly have taken. You definitely will as a part of the Links DEI community. So if you've not heard of those, it's just a really quick tool online that you can use to kind of look at your bias in 14 different areas. As Sudie mentioned earlier, there are lots of different types of bias. And so these tools give you a chance to do a quick assessment of where you fall on those. And the results of them are pretty surprising. Every time I've taken one, I've always been a little disappointed in myself. But Amy Johnson's going to present that session, and I'm very excited. And what she's really going to talk about is bias in the brain, so that we can understand how that tool even works to help us identify what biases we may have and be unaware of. And so I'm very excited to have those conversations, very excited to be in conversation with all of you online in the discussion groups as well as in our live session. So I'm very excited about those, looking forward to them, and I hope to see you there.
Thanks so much. I just popped a link in the chat that kind of gives you access to the implicit association test from Project Implicit, and then the Long Dang, who's on our links team and who is wonderful. Don't tell him I said that, though. We have this thing. I need him to think I don't like him that much. Anyway, he just posted the link to our community event. So if you have any questions or you want to find a link to any community event that Carmen just mentioned, just click that link there. And then someone asked, where do they find the learning center, because they don't see it. So from this, if you don't want to put in the whole URL, or if you can't find the link, if you scroll down, it's right here in this big box. And you can click see resources, and it's really cool. I know this was not the focus, but I really love that there's so many different resources in here and that we have these things available for students. So that is there for you. Alrighty, so are there any additional questions, or what other questions do you have for us today? Yes, Long is pretty great. But again, I mean, he just heard me say it. Pretend you didn't hear it, Long. We have a lot of really great team members and moderators with links that all really care. So Links uses Moodle. Links does not provide support with integrating into your LMS. You would need to do that on your own, but we do give you resources and links and things like that if you need to know how to move the content from Moodle into your LMS if you're using Canvas or Blackboard or something else. So if you want to request access to it, when we give you that access, we also include those links for you, so you know where to look for more information. Which link are you referring to? Thank you, Carmine. You had the same question I did. And then while we're waiting on that response, so if you have questions for Carmine or myself, our email addresses are on the screen. If you would like to request having training for your state, or if you want to request having access to that GitHub, things like that, please reach out to us at training@links.ed.gov, and we'll send you that information. I don't have your registered email, and I don't want to mispronounce your name, so I apologize for that. But you can, I don't know if you can download the chat. You should be able. It's in the chat, and if you click the three dots, Sally, thank you. If you click the three dots, click that save chat button, and then you'll have all the links that were popped into the chat today. Other questions? Oh, I'm really happy to do so. Thank you, Maureen. And a big thank you to Carmen for joining us today and for leading our DEI community on links and really helping us to really engage in this conversation on an ongoing basis, because that's what we have to do if we want to keep moving the needle forward. So thank you so much for not just being here today, but for being present and passionate and caring about this in general. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I was going to say something similar because your passion is palpable and it's very, I'm all excited about everyone accessing the course as well, just because I know how much work you put into it, how much love went into creating this. So I appreciate
you.
that. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this.
Of course. Do we have any crossover work with the Equity Lab? This is not directly connected to the Equity Labs. If the Equity Lab you're referring to is the things that are being done through a U.S. Department of Ed or Octave initiative, it will eventually end up on links. So every federal initiative that's specific to adult education that's coming out of Octave ultimately lands on links, and we end up sharing that information there. So we try to integrate these things so you can find things all in one place as much as we can. And then if you're unable to get the links that you needed, I'm going to go ahead and save the chat myself. Just feel free to shoot me an email and then I can send you the chat.
Oh, there you go.
All right, so I think that's about it for us. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you all being here. Please don't forget to do the poll. Let us know how we did. And also, please, I'm going to put the email addresses back on the screen just in case anybody wants to reach out. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions about the course, about links, or about the community. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Carmen and Sudie. I have a feeling the poll is going to be pretty favorable. That was an awesome presentation. I love it when there's so much interaction between the audience and the presenters. That's always a good sign, and excellent content. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Please fill out our one question poll before you log off, if you could. As a quick reminder, this presentation and a replay of it will be posted to coabe.org within 24 hours of today's completion. So you can actually go back in there and download this, the PowerPoint presentation as well, just to get all these links. So with that, once again, thank you, Sudie. Thank you, Carmen, so much. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great week and a great weekend coming up. And that's it.
Thanks so much, everybody. James. Thanks again, Carmen.
Thank you.